The envelope arrived on a rainy Tuesday, elegant and cream-colored with gold trim. Rachel Turner stared at it on her kitchen counter while stirring a pot of spaghetti for her 8-year-old son, Liam. She hadn't spoken to her cousin Emily in over a year, not since Emily got engaged and Rachel quietly faded into the background of family events. Now, the wedding invitation sat before her like a ghost. Mr. and Mrs. Donovan invite you to the wedding of their daughter Emily to Mr. Aaron Blake. Tucked inside was a handwritten note, "Hope you can come. It's been a while, family should stick together." Rachel wasn't sure if it was a genuine olive branch or a polite obligation. She hadn't exactly been part of the family spotlight for years. A single mother, working 2 jobs, one at the local bookstore and another cleaning offices at night, she often felt like a walking shadow in her own bloodline. Still, Liam's eyes sparkled when he saw the card. "A wedding? Are we going, Mom?" She hesitated. "We'll see." Truthfully, she dreaded being there. Her relatives whispered, smiled with pity, and sometimes didn't acknowledge her at all. They talked about careers, vacations, and diamond rings. She had debt, exhaustion, and a kid who still slept in her bed after nightmares, but something inside her said to go. Not to prove anything, just to be seen. So, on the morning of the wedding, she dressed Liam in a neat little suit and put on the only formal dress she owned, a navy blue one from a thrift store. She tied her hair back and looked in the mirror. "I'm not here to impress anyone," she whispered to herself, "just to show up. That's enough." Or so she thought. The wedding venue was breathtaking, an ivy-covered manor on the edge of the city, with crystal chandeliers, floral archways, and a red carpet leading into the grand hall. Waiters in white gloves carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A jazz quartet played softly in the background. Rachel walked in holding Liam's hand. Heads turned, not out of excitement, but surprise. Murmurs spread like ripples through a pond. Some cousins offered tight, polite smiles. Others looked right past her, as though she were part of the decor. She spotted her aunt near the gift table, adjusting silverware with a clipboard in hand. "Oh," her aunt said flatly, scanning Rachel's dress. "You came. That's brave." Rachel forced a smile. "It's a beautiful setup." "It is, isn't it? Emily deserves it. She's worked so hard, and Aaron, well, he comes from a very established family." Her tone sharpened. "I just hope everything goes smoothly today." Rachel nodded and walked toward the edge of the room, settling at a table near the back, away from the main crowd. Liam sipped juice quietly, sensing his mother's tension. Guests arrived in waves: lawyers, executives, influencers. Laughter echoed. Photos were taken. And not once did anyone ask Rachel to join. The photographer glanced over her table and moved on without a word. Then came the moment that twisted her gut. Emily walked past their table with a group of friends. She paused, smiled coldly, and said loud enough for others to hear, "Wow. Rachel, you clean up nicely. I almost didn't recognize you. Must be hard balancing fashion and whatever it is you do these days." A few guests chuckled awkwardly. Rachel's cheeks burned, but she held her head high. Liam looked up at her, confused. "Why are they laughing, Mom?" She exhaled slowly. "Because they forgot who I am." As the ceremony began, Rachel sat quietly at the edge of the hall. Liam nestled beside her, swinging his legs under the chair. The guests turned their attention to the aisle, where Emily appeared like a vision, gown glittering, veil flowing, eyes locked ahead. She looked perfect. The crowd stood. Applause broke out. The groom, Aaron Blake, stood at the altar, calm and dignified. Rachel had only seen him in a few photos online, a rising star in legal circles, rumored to be the youngest partner at a prestigious law firm, the kind of man everyone whispered about with awe, but Rachel watched him differently. Not with awe, but with curiosity. Something about his stillness, the quiet control in his eyes, felt familiar. As vows were exchanged and rings slid into place, Rachel clapped with the rest, though her palms felt heavy. She was happy for Emily, genuinely. But the sting of being treated like a stain on a white carpet lingered. The reception began with a burst of excitement. Tables overflowed with food. Cameras flashed. And still, no one came to their table. Not even a hello. Rachel felt like a ghost among silk and lace. Then came the toasts. The best man spoke with humor. The maid of honor made people cry. And finally, Emily took the mic, her smile dazzling beneath the spotlight. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she began. "And I'm especially touched that even the less visible branches of the family made it." There were polite laughs, she continued, her eyes falling on Rachel. "Like my cousin Rachel, a single mom, working, well, wherever she works now. It means a lot that you came." Silence. Rachel's breath caught in her chest. Liam gripped her hand tighter, and in that silence, something began to shift. For a long, aching moment, the hall held its breath. The sting of Emily's words hung in the air, invisible but sharp. A few guests looked down at their glasses. Others gave nervous laughs. Rachel didn't move. Her spine was straight, her eyes calm, but her hand trembled in Liam's. Emily, still holding the mic, smiled like nothing had happened and lifted her glass. "To family, and to knowing your place." That was the final crack in the porcelain. Aaron stood at first. It was quiet. No one noticed. But then someone whispered, "The groom's getting up." All eyes shifted. The groom walked toward the mic with a calm expression that unsettled the room. He gently took the mic from Emily's hand. "Thank you, Emily," he said, his voice smooth but sharp, "but before we raise our glasses, I'd like to say something." Emily blinked, uncertain. Aaron turned to face the crowd. "I've heard a lot of speeches tonight. A lot of talk about success, beauty, appearances." He paused, then glanced toward the back of the hall. "But I think you should all know something." The crowd leaned in. He looked directly at Rachel. "You all just laughed at a woman who wakes up at 5 a.m. every day to raise her son. A woman who went back to school after her divorce, finished her degree while working nights, and graduated top of her class." Whispers broke out. "But that's not even the full story," Aaron continued. "Rachel Turner was offered a position at the state prosecutor's office last week. She turned it down, because she's joining my firm as a senior associate. Starting Monday." The room fell absolutely silent. Then, a small voice cut through the hush. "Liam, proud and unafraid, that's my mom." The room didn't move for a full 5 seconds. Frozen smiles, half-lifted champagne glasses, and wide eyes, all locked on Rachel. Then the whispers started. Hushed, frantic, guilty. Rachel blinked slowly, stunned. Emily's face paled. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her perfect posture faltered under the weight of Aaron's words. She turned away from the mic, suddenly aware of the guests' gazes now avoiding hers. Aaron stepped down from the stage, walked through the stunned crowd, and came directly to Rachel's table. He extended his hand. "Miss Turner," he said respectfully. "Or should I say, Counselor Turner. May I?" Rachel hesitated for a second, then rose to her feet. Liam looked up at her with pride glowing in his eyes. She took Aaron's hand, and he guided her gently to the center of the room. As they walked together, people began to clap. Hesitant at first. Then stronger. Then standing, the same relatives who'd ignored her now moved forward to shake her hand, murmuring congratulations. The photographer, who had overlooked her moments ago, now scrambled to get shots of her beside Aaron, her son smiling up beside them. Emily stood alone near the cake, her friends backing away slowly. Her mother approached Rachel with a nervous smile, suddenly full of warmth. "I didn't know, dear," she stammered. "None of us did." "If we had," Rachel interrupted gently. "You didn't need to know. You just needed to care." The applause grew louder. But Rachel wasn't basking in it. Her eyes were on Liam, who was clapping with the biggest smile she had ever seen, and in that moment, the years of struggle, shame, and silence didn't vanish, but they were no longer heavy. They had transformed into pride. The music resumed, softer now, as if the room itself had been humbled. Rachel stood in a small crowd of admirers, lawyers, professors, family friends, people who'd once barely acknowledged her presence, now eager to shake her hand, ask about her work, and exchange contact information. But Rachel's eyes kept drifting to the corner of the hall, where Emily stood stiffly, her hands clenched into fists behind her back. The bride who had once basked in attention now looked like she was shrinking in her lace and pearls. Aaron approached Emily, spoke to her in low tones. She nodded without looking at him, then, slowly, with all eyes still lingering on the scene, she walked toward Rachel. The crowd parted slightly, creating a quiet, curious space between the two women. Rachel didn't flinch. She stood tall, Liam's hand in hers, calm and composed. Emily stopped in front of her. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I mean, I thought I knew everything about you. But I didn't." Rachel raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Emily's lip trembled. "I've always felt like I was running ahead of you. Like I had something to prove. And when your life fell apart, I felt better. I thought I'd finally won." There was no malice in her voice now. "Only shame." "I'm sorry," she added, voice low. "I didn't realize how small that made me." Rachel looked at her cousin for a long moment. Then, simply, she said, "There's no race, Emily. There never was." Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. Rachel reached out and gently squeezed her hand. "Let's stop keeping score." A moment later, the jazz band struck up again, but the rhythm felt different now. Everything had changed. The rest of the evening unfolded like a dream. The tension that had once clung to the air was gone, replaced by a newfound warmth. People continued to congratulate Rachel, but now, it wasn't out of obligation. It was genuine. Liam, now surrounded by cousins who had previously ignored him, was enjoying the attention. He smiled shyly when an older relative asked about his favorite soccer team. For the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider. Rachel felt the shift in herself too. The weight of being underestimated, the years of silencing herself to avoid the judgment, those burdens seemed to dissolve as she moved through the room, smiling, talking, accepting compliments that no longer felt awkward. And then, the moment she had almost forgotten was upon her. The father-daughter dance began. Emily and her father swirled around the floor, their movements graceful and effortless. The whole room watched, captivated by the scene, but Rachel's thoughts drifted to a quieter place, her own path, how far she had come. She didn't need a public spectacle of recognition. The people who mattered knew who she was. The only validation she needed was from herself, and from Liam, whose voice rang out across the hall once again. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he said, barely above a whisper, as he nestled beside her. Rachel smiled and squeezed his hand tighter. "You've always been my greatest achievement." Then, she heard someone behind her. "May I have this dance?" Rachel turned to see Aaron standing there, offering his hand. The other guests were looking on, some with raised eyebrows, others with intrigued smiles. But Rachel felt a calm settle within her. The night was no longer about validation or competing for attention. It was about living her truth, standing in her power. She took Aaron's hand, and they glided across the floor, a new understanding between them. The music swirled around them, and Rachel realized that in this moment, she was finally free. The night wore on, but Rachel wasn't concerned about the time. The air felt lighter now. The conversations had shifted from judgment to genuine curiosity. Even Emily, who had been distant throughout the evening, now stood with her arm around Rachel's shoulders, quietly laughing with her about the wedding mishaps that only family could truly appreciate. Rachel had always known that family could be a tricky thing. So much history was packed into these rooms, these familiar faces, and it had always felt like a web of unspoken rules, expectations, and whispers. But now, she could see that the web had started to unravel. She glanced around at the people who had once ignored her, who had once looked at her with pity. Now they spoke with her like an equal. They didn't just ask about her work, they asked about her life. About Liam. About her dreams. She spoke openly about her plans to move forward, her aspirations, not just for herself, but for Liam. For them. But there was one conversation that would shape her future even more than the others. Aaron approached her again later in the evening, his eyes still soft with respect, though they held a certain determination. "Rachel," he said quietly, taking a step closer, "I've been thinking. We need someone like you in my firm. Your strength, your background, and now, your vision. You deserve more than what you've settled for. I don't want you to feel like you're confined to a family role anymore. You can have it all, your career, your family, your life on your terms. Rachel was stunned. The words hit her deeper than she had expected. She'd always believed she had to do it alone. To be independent. But now, hearing Aaron's offer, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to fight for everything by herself. I'll think about it, she replied, her voice steady but filled with something new, hope, and for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it was possible. The night was nearing its end, the soft hum of conversation mingling with the last strains of music. Guests began to gather their belongings, their voices growing louder as they said their goodbyes. But Rachel stayed where she was, leaning against the marble pillar near the back of the room, watching the fading lights and the lingering smiles. Liam had already fallen asleep in a chair by her side, his little body curled up, his head resting against her jacket. Rachel smiled softly at the sight, her heart swelling with a quiet pride. Despite the awkwardness and the discomfort of the earlier moments, this night had changed everything. It wasn't about the fame or the recognition, it was about the people who mattered most to her, her son, her friends, and, for the first time, herself. A gentle hand tapped her shoulder, and she turned to see Emily standing there, her face still soft with apology but also with a strange vulnerability. The glittering bride who had once stood on a pedestal now seemed smaller, more human. I never imagined it would turn out like this, Emily admitted, her voice low, almost unsure. I thought I was ahead of you, Rachel. But tonight, I see you. I see what I couldn't before. I've been so wrapped up in my own life, in my own image, that I forgot what real strength looks like. And now, I'm proud of you. I truly am. Rachel's eyes softened, the bitterness of earlier in the evening fading into something lighter. She nodded slowly. I never asked for any of this, she said gently. I just wanted to show up and be present, not for anyone else. But for me and Liam. Emily swallowed, her gaze falling to the floor. I think we both forgot that. The weight of those words hung in the air, but it was a weight Rachel could now carry without the burden of resentment or comparison. She had nothing to prove anymore. Let's move forward, Rachel said with a quiet conviction. Without the need for apologies or expectations, just, as ourselves. Emily met her eyes, her face breaking into a small but genuine smile. Agreed. Rachel watched as Emily turned to join her guests, her demeanor lighter. There was no longer any rivalry between them, no more competition. Only acceptance, and in that moment, Rachel knew. The past didn't define her, and neither did anyone's expectations of her. She had already arrived, in her own quiet, powerful way. The wedding had come to its final moments, but the night had left a lasting imprint on Rachel. As the last guests filtered out, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses fading into the distance, she felt a quiet peace settle over her. Liam stirred beside her, his small hand grasping her sleeve as he blinked his eyes open. Mom? His voice was soft, groggy from the long evening. Rachel smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. Hey, buddy. You ready to go home? Liam nodded sleepily, still holding her hand as she helped him stand. But before they could leave, Aaron approached them once again. He looked as calm and steady as ever, but there was a new light in his eyes, one that suggested he knew exactly what Rachel had been through, and exactly what was waiting for her. I meant what I said earlier, he said, his tone sincere. The offer stands. You deserve more than what you think you can have. I want you on my team. Rachel felt her heart race at the thought. She had always dreamed of doing more, of stepping into her full potential. But the thought of juggling it all, of risking failure, still haunted her. Yet something inside her stirred, a quiet voice telling her that maybe, just maybe, she could do it all. She looked down at Liam, his tired face lit up with a small, trusting smile. He believed in her. And for him, she would fight for that future. I'll accept, she said quietly, meeting Aaron's eyes. But only if you promise me one thing. Aaron raised an eyebrow. Anything. That you won't just see me for my title, or my work. See me as Rachel, Liam's mom, the woman who doesn't need anyone to tell her she's enough. Not anymore. Aaron nodded, a deep respect in his gaze. I wouldn't have it any other way. As Rachel left the venue, her heels clicking softly against the floor, she felt the weight of the night's events settle into something solid. This wasn't just the end of a wedding. This was the beginning of her journey. A journey that, for the first time, she would take on her own terms, and she knew, without a doubt, that whatever came next, she would be ready. If you enjoyed this story of strength, resilience, and the power of standing up for yourself, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. There are more stories of triumph, empowerment, and unforgettable moments coming your way. Share this with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength, and let's keep inspiring each other. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.